On today's show, the Milwaukee Bucks with a shakeup. Adrian Griffin out and Doc Rivers in. Why the need for a head coaching change for this Bucks team? What changes have we seen so far 4 games in from Doc Rivers? What's the biggest need for this Bucks team ahead of the NBA trade deadline, and how aggressive can we expect them to be? We're going to unpack it all right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Joining us now is Camille Davis, the host of Locked On Bucks. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Bucks. And Camille, Adrian Griffin out, Doc Rivers in. They're wasting no time. We might get into some of the hilarity of Doc Rivers being anointed the coach of the Eastern Conference All-Star team if we have time. But let's start right there. Why did the Bucks feel the need to move on from Adrian Griffin despite having one of the best records in the NBA so far this season?
There's a few reasons for that, Jackson, and it's interesting to think about because, like you mentioned, when Adrian Griffin was fired, the Bucks were second in the East. They were 30-13, if I remember correctly, at that time, so it was seen as a surprise. The joke was maybe they didn't beat the Pistons by enough, and that's why Adrian Griffin had to go. But
hey, man, point differential, right? It matters in today's NBA.
Listen. People point to it, but no, jokes aside, it just comes down to the fact that although the Bucks were able to win games, the process wasn't leading to the proper results. So the Bucks were taking a look at things and saying like, hey, we're getting wins and that's good. We know this team is figuring things out. We are well aware of the fact that it's a new head coach. It's a new star point guard on the team. There's new pieces that have to be implemented and get used to playing with each other. Understand all of that. And we see this team winning games, but the way they're winning games, management just didn't seem like the ways that they were winning the games felt sustainable. Halfway through the season, guys were still unsure about what they were running, why they were running it. They weren't sure what their identity was. And there were just a lot of questions about who this team was. And they felt like this is not going to get it done for a team with championship expectations. And the Bucks have a sense of urgency really bad. As you can tell now, they're paying 3 head coaches. So like they are really trying their hardest to win a championship. And they just didn't feel that Adrian Griffin had the tools to take them where they needed to be in this situation.
Do you feel that Griffin ever had the chance to establish, or maybe he never did, establish an identity with this Bucks team?
Yeah, it's hard because when he started out, it seemed like he was trying to run defenses and schemes that suited the Toronto teams that he was a part of the last few years before getting to Milwaukee. But the problem with that is that the Bucks don't have the Raptors personnel. Yeah. So it just wasn't working out. Like Adrian Griffin was trying to do a lot of aggressive schemes with this team to force more turnovers, and the Bucks were still last in the league in turnovers. There were guys, you heard Giannis after a game where he was like, what do we do? Like we give up everything. Like we can't give up everything. We have to have more pride. We have to be better. And you can see the early returns with Doc, although on this current West Coast trip, we're 4 games in, they won 1 game so far under Doc Rivers, but you're seeing the process looks a lot more sound. Guys seem to know where they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing, which is a little bit different, although the wins aren't translating right now in this moment.
Yeah, just a 1-3 start so far in the Doc Rivers era of Milwaukee Bucks basketball. So let's get into that a little bit. Why just the 1-3 record right out of the gate? And then what are some of the things that you're seeing Doc kind of trying to change on the fly? Because that's the other other unfortunate element here is, yes, maybe moving on from Griffin was the right decision, but to have to do that in the middle of the season, to go from a group of guys that was already trying to understand and implement what one head coach wanted, and even maybe breaking some habits and tendencies from the Budenholzer era, right? So you're trying to adjust there, and now you've got a whole new head coach coming in with a whole new identity and idea of how he wants to run things, philosophy, all that. So kind of what are some of the things that Doc is trying to implement and change right here, right out of the gate?
Well, he's just trying to clean a lot of things up because, as you mentioned, becoming a head coach in the middle of a season, that's difficult to do. You don't have the luxury of having a training camp. You don't have the luxury of having weeks before the season starts to install what you want to run. So Doc is coming in, and initially he was like, we're just going to try to clean up some things. I need to understand the terminology that you guys are using and try to map that onto my terminology for some of the same plays that I run, get an understanding of who's on this team and how these guys play. Adrian Griffin was somebody who was, known to be a player development type of coach. And under Adrian Griffin, we saw a lot of the young Bucks get some more run. Your Andre Jackson Jr.'s, Marjan at the beginning of the season, some AJ Green sprinkled in there. And once Doc came in, he pretty much has rolled with the vets. AJ Green has gotten some run over the last 2 games, including tonight against Utah. But what you see Doc doing is trying to, one, fix the Bucks in transition defense where they had been terrible. And the biggest part, honestly, with what Doc is implementing is just getting this team to talk on defense. That's been a big point of emphasis for him, where when he had his first practice with the team, the practice was one as such where the coaches couldn't speak and the players had to speak the entire practice all the way through. And at first he said the players were kind of confused, like, what should we do? And to their own admission, they've been a low communication team. So they were forced in that situation to start communicating. And Doc said it might take them a while to get into that habit, into that rhythm, but they got to do that. And offensively, just sharing the ball a little bit more. He was like, it's a lot of individual talent on this team. And a lot of times you can tell when the ball is sticking and when guys are just trying to make a play on themselves. So he's trying to also get them to move the ball a little bit more and implement more of a 2-man game between Giannis and Dame as like the crucial cornerstone piece of the offense.
Where's the one area, if you could just slide the scale up to 99 for Doc Rivers to find success with this Bucks team compared to his predecessor in Adrian Griffin, what would that one area be?
I think it would have to be defense. And I still do think that the Bucks need to make a move at the deadline to acquire some defensive help and on the point of attack defense in particular. But defensively, I've said for a while, we know the Bucks can score, and they had been a top 2 offense under Griffin. And I was saying, like, you look at the Nuggets from last year, where it's like it's an elite offense, top 15 defense, but to the Nuggets' credit, to end the season last year, they were a top 10 defense, to end the season out. So I was saying, like, if the Bucks can be elite offensively and just average at worst on defense, they still have a lot of opportunity to make a strong playoff run, playoff push, and challenge for a championship. So if Doc can just come in, help them clean up that transition defense, help them out with the rebounding, help them out with the switches when they have to get into scramble mode with guys communicating and getting into their spots better, they'll look a lot better than what we have seen early on with the early returns under Griffin.
You mentioned the need to add maybe, another point of attack defender. That was going to be my final question for you, is just what is the Bucks' biggest need going into the trade deadline, and how aggressive could we see them, be in these next coming days? So are there a couple names out there that you should have your eyes on if you're a Bucks fan, somebody that you would hope this team is going to maybe target ahead of the deadline?
Yeah, there's a couple names that have been floating around with the Bucks team. One of the names that I was most personally excited about was Matisse Thybulle in Portland. But given the fact that he played with Doc in Philly and things didn't go well there, and Thybulle has the ability to veto a trade because he signed the restricted free agent tenor this past season, I don't see that one coming into fruition anymore. But some other names that have been thrown out there, Chris Dunn, someone who the Bucks just saw tonight against the Jazz. His name has been thrown out. Bruce Brown's name has been thrown out. DeJounte Murray is another name that the Bucks have been rumored to be interested in. But personally, that one is kind of an interesting fit for me. I'm not sure how happy DeJounte would be with the pecking order here, coming in with Dame, with Giannis, with Chris, and how that would all fit. But if you have the opportunity to add somebody like that, like, I get why you do it. You figure out the rest afterwards.
How will the rest of the season look with Doc Rivers now in the coaching chair in Milwaukee? Will we see the Bucks be aggressive ahead of the NBA trade deadline? Could they add a point of attack defender or maybe some other pieces to this roster? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Bucks. Camille, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Of course, thanks for having me.